We're going to get started here. It's 11 o'clock and it's time to get going with our Freedom Rally. Let's hear it. Let's hear some noise. If you want more freedom in the state of Minnesota, stand up and yell. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for freedom. Let's hear it for freedom. All right. All right. Now we are gonna cut loose. We are gonna cut loose in just a couple of minutes. But the first thing we are going to do is to pledge allegiance to our flag. So let's start with that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everybody. Feel free to move on a little closer, but don't dance on the star. You're not supposed to do that. Our group doesn't dance on the star, the North Star for the state of Minnesota. We are here today because we are seeing in the 2023 legislative session the most extreme, the most radical, the most left-wing legislative agenda that has ever been proposed, let alone enacted in the history of the state of Minnesota and possibly in the history of any state. And we're going to be hearing more about that as we go through the next 45 minutes or so. We've got some terrific speakers lined up, and that's what they're going to be talking about. But the fundamental message that we want to convey to our legislators is we've had enough. We want them to stop the madness. Stop the madness. Now, let me tell you that the Minnesota Senate is meeting right now up these stairs. They've got the doors closed, but if we make enough noise, they are going to be able to hear us. So before we begin with our speakers, I want to hear some noise, and here is what we are going to say to the legislature of Minnesota. Bill, are you ready? All right. Stop the madness. 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 You know, it has often been said that no man's property is safe while the legislature is in session. And that is true, and it especially is true here in Minnesota, as every time you turn around, they're trying to raise our taxes again. But you know what's even worse? You know what's even worse than that? Is that when the legislature is in session, no man's freedom is safe. And that's why we are here today, to rally for freedom. And so let's hear some noise, and let's let these legislators know that we've seen enough of the far left radical agenda we don't want to see anymore. So our first speaker today is going to be Isaac Orr. Isaac Orr is a policy fellow at Center of the American Experiment. He is one of the top experts in the United States on energy. He and his American Experiment team have now worked on energy projects in 13 states. That's how much in demand they are. And Isaac is going to tell us a little bit about the blackout bill, which, as many of you know, our legislature has actually passed already, and it's actually been signed into law. So please welcome Isaac Orr.
All right, I like it. All right, everybody, thanks for being here this morning. We really appreciate it. We face a lot of problems in Minnesota right now, but the biggest problem we face is arrogance. The liberals are convinced that they are right and that anyone who doesn't agree with them is wrong. And the big problem with that is these are the people that don't understand where their food comes from, and they don't understand how the electricity gets to their houses. So despite this ignorance, they want to tell farmers how to farm, and they want to mandate electricity companies use sources of electricity that don't work when the weather doesn't cooperate. It's Minnesota. It snowed a foot 3 days ago. When does the weather cooperate? So earlier this year, the Liberals passed the 100% carbon-free electricity mandate by 2040. At American Experiment, we called that the blackout bill because blackouts are inevitable at this point. We're closing down too many coal plants, too many gas plants, and we're trying to replace them with wind and solar that only work about 33% or 18% of the time. It's not going to work. It doesn't work in California. It's not going to work here. So when the blackouts eventually do hit, it's going to be a problem because when blackouts hit, people die. We saw this in Texas during Winter Storm Uri, and the blackouts happened largely because wind and solar disappeared when the chips were down. So when it happens here, the blood's going to be on their hands, and they need to remember that. So the blackout bill is also going to cause electricity prices to skyrocket. We have nurses that can't afford their groceries and their electric bills right now, and it's only going to get worse moving forward. It's terrible for our seniors, and it's terrible for low-income families like the one that I grew up in on a farm in Wisconsin. So it's important to remember they passed this with zero input from conservatives, zero amendments, right? Conservatives offered an amendment that said, hey, if there's a blackout, there should be an automatic off-ramp for this legislation. They said no. They offered amendments that said, hey, if prices go up too much, there should be an automatic off-ramp for this legislation. They said no. So the worst part of this whole situation is the Liberals aren't done yet, right? They want to increase your taxes so they can give $2,500 rebates to people who purchase electric vehicles. How many of us can afford an electric vehicle, right? So this is a wealth transfer from working Minnesotans to white wealthy liberals. So I guess that makes sense, right? That's their constituency. So they want you to pay higher electric bills so that you can fund EV charging stations. They want you to give millions of dollars to wind and solar lobbying groups who do not represent your interests. And then you have fake conservative groups like the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum that support that bill. So if you see someone from that organization, let them know how you feel about that. So they also want to ban the sale of gas lawnmowers, chainsaws, and other equipment. They want to ban gas furnaces and stoves, even though 66% of us heat our homes with natural gas. And they want to micromanage every aspect of your life when these people can't even run their own lives. So that's why they need to increase your taxes to pay their salaries, right? So the worst part about this is that the Liberals are abusing the trust that Minnesotans have in their government. Minnesota has had a reputation of being the state that works, but it doesn't work anymore. And the Liberals, they won't even legalize new nuclear power plants, which is the only source of emissions-free energy that actually works. So we need to stop the madness now, so thank you all for coming today to support our efforts.
All right, thanks a lot, Isaac. Now, we are very concerned, all of us here, about the direction the Minnesota legislature has been taking in this session, but it's not all bad, and there are some people in the legislature who are fighting for you, who are fighting for us, who are fighting for the future of our state, and one of the leaders in that effort is Lisa Demuth. She is the minority leader of the Minnesota House of Representatives, and she is out there every single day fighting to try to stop the madness that we're seeing from the other side. So please welcome Lisa Demuth.
Good morning, Freedom Rally. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here, fighting for our freedom, fighting to keep Minnesota the great state that it is. Thank you for being here. In the Minnesota House, just know that there are 64 Republican members in the House that are fighting each and every day for our freedom, and we will not stop. We are fighting in committee to bring forward what are some of the most concerning provisions that are being brought forth by the extreme Democrats. We are fighting with amendments. We are fighting with our voice. We are fighting with our message. When we get to the House floor, we are also fighting to preserve the freedoms that Minnesotans deserve and expect. What you will see, what has been extremely lacking so far in all of the work being done is tax reform. When we are sitting on a $17.5 billion surplus of all of the taxpayer money, there has not been one single dime brought back and given back to the Minnesotans. That is what we are fighting for, is tax relief. What is being brought forward? The Democrat proposals so far. The Democrat proposals so far actually show a tax increase, not giving your taxes back, but actually increasing for the next biennium, and we need it back. We need to preserve our freedoms in Minnesota, and I want you all to look into the middle of the rotunda right now at the North Star right here. Always stanchioned off, never to be touched or walked on. It is a secular symbol that is upheld in the state of Minnesota, a sign of freedom. And I want you to know, on Friday, a group of people that came in to the rotunda and had an event as they can crossed a line that should never have been crossed by stepping over the stanchions, stepping over and dancing on that star in a very wrong way. That is something that is symbolic of what is being brought forward in our state, that it is stamping on our freedom. It is stamping on the true North Star, and we will not stand up for that in this state at all. I want to thank you each one for being here. Don't give up. Together we can make a difference and make Minnesota what it needs to be. Don't give up, work with us, and thank you for being here for this rally.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa Dameth. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable that with a $18 billion surplus, did we lose our microphone there? Now it's back on. It is absolutely unbelievable that with $17 billion, $18 billion surplus, the liberals in the Minnesota legislature, instead of cutting our taxes as states are doing all across the country, you know, almost every state has a surplus as a result of the money printing in Washington, D.C. I think California might be the only state that doesn't have a surplus. They've got a deficit. The other states with surpluses are doing the right thing. They are cutting taxes. That's the obvious thing to do. But the liberals in Minnesota, despite an $18 billion surplus, are talking about raising our taxes. It is absolutely unbelievable. So before we hear from our next speaker, let's make a little noise about that. It's our surplus. Give it back. 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 All right. So we talk about freedom fighters. Our next speaker is a man who is on the radio fighting for freedom every day on K-Talk Radio, AM 1130. And please give a warm welcome to Jon Justice.
He's right. My name is Jon Justice. I identify as a man. That's because that's what I am. I'm a fan of reality, and that's how God made me. I don't drink Bud Light. I miss Zima. I'm still a man, though, despite the fact that my older brothers dressed me up in my mother's jewelry and a dress, and I smiled. My parents were rational enough and smart enough to realize that we were just having fun at the time. Oh, and my pronouns are, I don't care. And I know those aren't pronouns, but you can call me whatever you want. I've been called a lot of things. I haven't had a nap yet today, so I actually wrote down my speech, so bear with me. But I thought a lot about what I wanted to say while I was up here, and I really just want to encourage you, because if you haven't been told this lately, you're right. I hope you'll carry this from now until the next time you have an opportunity to go and vote. Those that removed protections for our most vulnerable are wrong. Those who are fighting and have fought against it are right. Those who want to continue to restrict law-abiding gun owners, believing that this will somehow lower crime and protect children, Walz is full of it. Passing laws that are going to do the exact opposite while they continue to lower penalties for criminals, they're wrong. You who are fighting against it, you're right. Those who cheer on and invited men who dress as women displaying their immorality right here at the Capitol are wrong. And those who stand here today and sit here and join us today, who are fighting for future and respect and reality, are right. Those who continue to take advantage of our children, using them as pawns to push their agenda and stripping parents of their own right to choose, our own flesh and blood to choose how we want to raise our children, right? They're morally bankrupt, they're wrong, you're right. So Governor Tim Walz won the election, but his mantra of one Minnesota is a lie. He's lied to the voters, and he's a failure as a leader. The DFL lied about who the extremists were and are. They are not the right. The DFL has their trifecta of power, and yes, they won the election, but they've lied to their voters, and they're failing in their elected duties. So I want to leave you with this. I hope you'll smile today in the face of evil that showed itself during the legislative session. Smile because you know the truth. Smile because you know you're right, and the truth is on your side. To the mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, sisters and brothers, boys and girls, those who say otherwise are wrong. To those in the House, those in the Senate, every day brings a new opportunity to speak the truth. For now, get the truth out online. Get it out among your friends. Get it out here at the Capitol. Get the truth out to everyone and anyone who will listen, and prepare now. We all have the tools at our disposal, but we're going to have to work harder than the opposition to bring the truth to the people and the change this great state needs to survive. What's been done can always be undone. Look, I came here to Minnesota 7 years ago to work with my best friend. Okay, I lost my best friend, but I've decided to stay here in Minnesota because this is a great state and can continue to be a great state because of you guys. So let's continue to fight, undo what's been done and what will be done between now and the next election. You have the tools, you know what to do. Go out there and use them and fight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you. You know, one of the many areas where liberals are really trying to undermine and destroy the state of Minnesota is education. There was a time when Minnesotans were actually proud of our public schools. But liberals have been making war on our schools. How are they doing that? They are trying to replace education, which is what we want as parents and as citizens, with indoctrination, which is what they want as left-wing activists. And as a result of that, the quality of our schools has been steadily declining. How many of you are aware that currently, with the most recent testing, only 36% of 11th graders in the state of Minnesota can do math at grade level? 36%. 64% of our 11th graders are about to graduate from high school and they can't do math. Only half of our kids, K through 12, can read at grade level. This is an absolute disgrace. We are failing our kids, and the reason we are failing our kids is that the liberals have taken over control of our public schools, and they are doing their best to turn them in the direction of indoctrination instead of education. Now, one of the people who's been fighting against that most effectively is Elfrida Baldwin. Elfrida Baldwin is our next speaker. She is with Take Charge Minnesota. Take Charge is a wonderful organization fighting for freedom, fighting for the rights of all Minnesotans, and especially young Minnesotans. So please welcome Elfrida Baldwin.
Good morning. I'm not exactly sure it's fair that I get to follow the talk show host. I am, after all, a boring attorney, but I will do my best. I moved to Minnesota over 40 years ago. And despite the cold, long winters and the potholes and the mosquitoes, I fell in love with this state. But this last legislative session has left me with moments where I have wanted to get out of here. But those moments don't last too long because my roots are here. They're too deep for me to leave. And so I decided that my conscience demanded that I be here to speak against this clown show agenda that the DFL is putting forward. I don't do this kind of stuff. I'm not a rally attender. I'm not a rah-rah civic person. But I'm here today to tell the DFL to leave our children alone. Remember when they claimed that critical race theory doesn't exist? Then they decided that it's only a theory taught in law school. Well, now that the DFL has one-party control of this state, they have dropped the pretense. They are rushing forward with legislation that will infuse our K-12 curriculum with dangerous CRT ideology. They claim the changes will benefit children of color. But I, who am obviously a black woman, beg to differ. And I have said so at 2 committee hearings. On February 14th, I appeared before a Senate Education Finance Committee that was discussing a bill to strengthen the Teachers of Color Act. Strangely enough, the bill contained words taken straight from the CRT playbook. I told the committee I don't understand what these words are doing here. I also told them that I thank God that I was educated before America became obsessed with race. Because I never would have reached the level of success I have reached if I had been sitting in a classroom being told every day that I was a victim and that I could not achieve. Then a few weeks ago, I testified before a House Education Finance Committee on a bill that will require school districts to implement ethnic studies curriculum. I don't think any of us has a problem with an ethnic studies curriculum that teaches kids about other cultures, history, language, way of life. But if you read the bill, that's not what ethnic studies is. Again, it's straight out of the CRT playbook. Based on the way the term is defined, this isn't an ethnic studies bill. It's a critical social justice bill that will put kids into camps based on the color of their skin and set them up as either victims or victimizers. This legislation will create feelings of hopelessness and anger in black students. It will produce guilt in white students who have nothing to feel guilty about. It will confuse mixed-race children because they'll have to pick which parent they want to side with. And the other children of color will be poisoned by this ridiculous ideology. After I finished my testimony, the chair of the committee took the time to give me a backhanded scolding about not maintaining decorum and name-calling. I went back and listened to my testimony. I didn't call any names. That's not what I do. And other than the passion in my voice from righteous anger, because I'm telling you, I'm tired of black people being used to push this stupid Marxist agenda. The reality is she didn't like my message because they don't want to acknowledge that there are black people who think the way I do. Well, you know what? All the DFL needs to hear these inconvenient truths. They need to hear it from all of us, regardless of our skin color. They have pushed these bills forward with lightning speed, with no opposition, and we need to tell them to stop it. When you leave here today, you need to go and tell your representatives, it's 2023, not 1923. We have made tremendous progress in race relationships in this country. Do not take us back. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, Elfrida. Well, among many other things, the far left has been making war on Minnesota's families. We've seen that over and over again. You all know what I'm talking about. And here to talk about that aspect of the craziness that we're seeing from our current legislature is one of the rising stars of conservatism in Minnesota, Renee Carlson. Renee is a lawyer with True North Legal and the Minnesota Family Council. Please welcome Renee Carlson.
Well, good morning, freedom-minded Minnesotans! As John said, I'm an attorney at True North Legal and Minnesota Family Council, but I'm also a wife and a mother living in Minnesota, so this is personal. Every day, our organization works to protect and defend life, family, and religious freedom for all Minnesotans. If you share these values with me today, let me hear you say freedom! 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 Minnesotans, we cannot and we will not sit back and let our governor, our attorney general, and our legislature trample on our freedoms. We must stand firm to protect our freedoms for each other and for our children. We will stand together. We will stand together for life because life is a human right. It is not a matter of partisan politics. Yet, the trifecta, as they call themselves, is working to pass some of the most egregious abortion policies in the world, putting Minnesota on par with countries like China and North Korea. And although the legislature created a fundamental right to abortion in House File 1 and Senate File 1, it seeks to go even further by removing nearly all health and safety protections for women and young girls seeking an abortion in Minnesota. This means removing reporting requirements when we should be keeping abortionists accountable. This means taking away all state funding for pregnancy resource centers when we could be saving more babies and helping more women. They are trying to expand taxpayer-funded abortions, unfettered access to abortion on our dime. To that, we say no. And removing laws that explicitly require life-saving care for infants born alive that survive an abortion, all while allowing abortion up to birth. If this legislation passes the conference committees, Minnesota cattle and reptiles will have more rights than Minnesotans' preborn children. Let me hear you. The madness must stop. But do not give up. Our engagement on this issue has slowed the progress and momentum of these extreme abortion bills, especially in the Senate, where there is a very slim majority. We may even be able to save the parental notification provisions in these bills. Keep telling your legislators to be our voice at the Capitol and to stand with 70% of Minnesotans who do not agree with their extreme abortion regime. Minnesotans, together, we stand for families against legislation like House File 146 and Senate File 63 that seek to exploit vulnerable children and violate parental rights by giving courts emergency custody of a child when his or her parents refuse to provide so-called gender-affirming care. Let me ask these legislators, what is caring about removing children from their parents and allowing kids to be used as medical experiments, resulting in life-altering consequences to their bodies? And we know that the solution is not more drag queens at the Capitol, and it's certainly not menstrual products in the men's restrooms. Children need access to counselors that will help them learn how to become comfortable in their body. But even something as simple as access to good counseling is under attack by this legislators under so-called conversion therapy bans. To be clear, we in this room do not condone hate as some may claim. This is about keeping our children whole. Harmful gender legislation could hit the Senate floor as early as next week. Say it with me. Stop the madness. Say it again. Stop the madness. Tell your legislators that parents know what's best for your children, because we, parents, do not co-parent with the government. Together, we stand up for religious freedom and the right to worship God according to the dictates of our conscience. Legislators who support religious bigotry against faith-based colleges must be held accountable for the religious discrimination embedded in the Education Omnibus Bill. This bill disqualifies faith-based colleges from a state-funded PSEO program simply because these schools adhere to a religious statement of faith. Students deserve more opportunities, not less, and they certainly do not deserve state-sanctioned religious discrimination. Let me hear it again. This madness must stop. And might I add, the attorneys are watching. Minnesotans, now is the time to double down on the truth. Are you with me? Tell your legislators and Governor Walz that we will not allow our first freedoms to become remnants of the past. While it may feel like an uphill battle, do not lose hope. The attacks on our freedoms are premised on lies that cannot be sustained. As Shakespeare said, no legacy is so rich as honesty. Now
without hesitation, all of us in this room have a job to do. Let us all go out and tell the truth. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Renee. Well, as you mentioned earlier, the Minnesota Senate is actually in session, but Minority Leader Senator Mark Johnson has taken a few minutes out of his schedule, and he is here right now to talk to you. Please welcome Minority Leader Mark Johnson.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Welcome, Minnesota. Thank you for being here and showing up and raising your voices for Minnesota conservatives. I appreciate this. Minnesota appreciates the common sense that you bring to this Capitol. Thank you so much for being here. Also, folks, thank you for not dancing on the star today. I know it was a big thing for you not to do that, so thank you for not doing that. It's nice to see. And I want to bring out the Minnesota State Senate here. Come on, Senate Republicans, come on out here. This is the team. Folks, this is the team that is working day in and day out through committees, through floor sessions, hour after hour, protecting your rights in the state of Minnesota. Amen. It's an uphill battle. We lost the majority, but we are committed every single day to 2026 and getting back the majority to protect our rights in Minnesota for freedom, for liberty, for our families, and for faith. Amen. Folks, one of the questions I get asked every single day, Mark, we've got $17.5 billion in surplus. How are we going to get that money back? How are we going to get that money back in our pocket that we bled, that we worked, that we gave up time with family, that we did things, sacrificed to get that money, and now the state government is taking that away from us? How do we get that back? And we've given offers. We said, we're giving this back in tax relief. We're giving this back however we can do it. But what do the Democrats do? They spend it. This state government is going to grow by 30% in one session. Not only that, but there's proposal for an extra $7 billion of spending on top of that. Folks, $7 billion, it doesn't even make sense to us at this point. We can't understand what billions are, and yet we are putting numbers to these bills that we will never recover from in this state if we continue down this path. Our goal is to try to hold that back as much as we possibly can, and we're using every tool in our toolbox to do that. We're fighting every day for you. This team right here is the top-notch team that's working for you, and we appreciate your support, and we feel your prayers. Folks, enjoy your time here today. Make your voices loud, be heard, and please continue to pray. Continue to pray for the state, continue to pray for the leaders of this state. We all need that in this time. God bless you, and God bless Minnesota.
All right, well, this sounds like a good time to make ourselves heard on one of the subjects that Senator Johnson just mentioned, and that is the 17 or 18 billion dollar surplus that's going up in smoke in the form of new and unneeded spending. So now let's hear everybody say, "It's our surplus, give it back. It's our surplus, give it back. It's our our surplus. Give it back. It's our surplus. Give it back. It's our surplus. Give it back. All right, next on our speaker list, we're drawing toward the end of our program, but we're not there yet, is Jim Schultz. Jim ran for Attorney General last November against Keith Ellison, and he's here to talk to you now. Welcome, Jim Schultz.
What a great turnout we have here. As you guys know, I've been off the campaign trail for a little while here, and it is great to be with you all here, continuing to fight for the future of the state of Minnesota. Many of you know that I ran against the most extreme Attorney General in the history of the state of Minnesota. And right now, we're facing threats from him, but also from the most extreme governor in the history of the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz. We all know it is incredibly disturbing to me that right now, just a few weeks ago, there was a kid stabbed to death in St. Paul Public Schools, and cops were sent out, not allowed back into the building. There continues to be incredible crime throughout our state, particularly here in the metro, but there's fentanyl taking people's lives, taking the lives of our sons and daughters. The people are hurting throughout our state. And we have a legislature and a governor who isn't focusing on things like that. We have a legislature and a governor focused on things like abortion on demand for all 9 months of pregnancy. And a legislature and a governor focus on things like pumping kids full of drugs to try to change their gender. A legislature and a governor focus on things like spending 30% more than our state ever has. We right now have the most extreme leadership in our state's history, and it's incumbent upon you and me to continue to fight every single day for the future of our state. I know that after last November's election, some of us are still a little bit discouraged. Some friends, I'm sure you know them, are discouraged or thinking about leaving the state and things like that. Well, I'm here to say, let's keep fighting. Let's keep fighting for the future of our state. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. But we've got to turn that into action to continue fighting for our state. You know, this week, thank you. You know, this week is Holy Week. You know, of course, many Christians will celebrate Easter on Sunday. And there are many people here of different faiths. Many people in our state have different faiths. But I'm a Christian. I believe that this week changed the world forever. And one important part of this week is the suffering of Jesus Christ. And that's what we need right now. We need sacrifice. We need to sacrifice on behalf of our state, on behalf of the 5.5 million Minnesotans who deserve better than the reckless and extreme policies of our state's legislature. We have to keep fighting for the future of our state. And so let's keep fighting. For you traveling from up north, you've got a snowstorm to contend with. Prayers for that drive there. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep working for the future of our state because every single Minnesotan deserves better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Well, you're all students of the Constitution, and so you know that there are 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. Now, liberals don't actually respect any of those 10 amendments, but there's one they don't even admit exists. In the liberal catechism, there's only 9 amendments in the Bill of Rights because they don't count the Second Amendment, and they make war on it at every opportunity. So here to talk about that is Rob Doar, the head of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. Please welcome Rob Doar.
Thank you, thank you. Common sense, that's what they say, common sense, right? They want common sense gun control. They want just universal background checks, which creates a registry of every gun owner in the state. They want red flag firearm confiscation, where your firearms are taken from you through a secret court order. They want to ban magazine capacity based on some arbitrary number backed by nothing. They want you to force you to have law enforcement into your home without a warrant to search and make sure that your firearms are being safely stored. They want all of these things, and they call it common sense. Why is common sense so uncommon? That is not common sense. Luckily, we have been successful through the support of many in this room who are members and supporters of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. We have defeated almost every single one of those proposals this session, and they are gone. We have two left that are in play, and those are the first two that I mentioned. Red flag firearm confiscation, which allows your family members, your roommate, your girlfriend, your ex-girlfriend, or anybody who you have, quote, had a significant sexual or romantic relationship with, unquote, to get a secret court order to have your guns taken away from you. The first time you even know a complaint has been levied against you is, Sheriff's Department, give us your guns. That is absolutely unconstitutional. Then we have the universal background checks, which says that you can't even loan a firearm to your friend to go hunting for the weekend unless they go and register as a gun owner with the state through a permit to purchase process, show you that, and then you have to keep those records for 10 or 20 years, depending on which bill you're looking at. And then if you don't provide that to law enforcement upon demand, you're now a felon. But wait, there's more. Once you're done using that handgun for the weekend to go hunting, or that sporting rifle, can you give me my own gun back? No. I have to go get a permit to purchase, register as a gun owner with the state so that you can hand me my own firearm back. Again, common sense, right? I'm a fifth-generation Minnesotan. I have some tyrant from Nebraska coming in and telling me that I need to give up my gun rights in order to make him feel safer. Yet, a few years ago, when he wanted your vote down in southern Minnesota, he had no problem strolling around with his NRA-endorsed hat on, trying to appease to you gun owners in the state. He is two-faced and he's lying to you. He has the gall sitting up there to say that if we are talking about defending our rights, we're on the wrong side of history. Let me say this. If you are using the blood of innocent victims to push a policy agenda completely unrelated to that tragedy, you are on the wrong side of history, Governor Walz. We need one vote in the Senate to kill these bills, one vote, and I think we can do it. We need all of you to step up and help us out. We just had Jim Schultz up here. I wish every day that Jim Schultz would have beaten Keith Ellison. But as a consolation prize, I will take the fact that we just beat Keith Ellison. If you guys hadn't heard, last Friday, a district court judge who was appointed by Biden, no less, just ruled in our favor in a lawsuit that we had against the state of Minnesota for infringing on 18, 19, and 20-year-old young adults from exercising their right to bear arms. Keith Ellison is filing a response brief. They want to try to overturn that. We will fight them every step of the way. We just finished writing that brief yesterday to hold up this court decision. We're going to need your help. Please get involved. Please fight for your freedoms. Fight for us. Fight for your gun rights. Fight for every bit of your freedoms, because once your gun rights are gone, every single other freedom you have becomes a lot easier to take away. Let's not let it happen.
All right, before we listen to our next speaker, I think we have some shirts to give away. Bill, where are you? Yes, shirts. We're gonna, these wonderful Freedom Rally t-shirts we're gonna toss. Oh, yes. All right, what an honor. Sign him up. Sign him up for the Minnesota Twins, who, by the way, are undefeated starting the season at 4-0 after a big 11-1 win last night. There's something going right in the state of Minnesota. It's fun to cheer them on. And next we're going to hear from John Phelan. John is originally from England, as you will be able to tell when you hear him talk. He's an economist with an advanced degree from the London School of Economics, but he was fortunate enough to marry a woman from Minnesota. And so here he is working at Center of the American Experiment. And John is going to talk a little bit about some of the catastrophic effects that the legislation that we're seeing is going to have on Minnesota's economy. So please welcome John Phelan.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I have come here to chew bubblegum and stop the madness. And I am all out of bubblegum. Okay. People are fleeing Minnesota in record numbers. In the last 2 years, we have lost on net 33,000 Minnesotans to other states, mostly places like Florida. 23,000 Minnesotans on net have gone to Florida between 2010 and 2020. These have been Minnesotans of all ages. You often hear that it's just elderly people retiring to this state or that state, but that's not true. We see this net loss of residents across 5 of the 6 categories that the IRS breaks the data down into, including those aged under 26. And these include middle-class Minnesotans. We see a net loss of residents in every income category above $50,000 annually. Empirical research tells us that taxes are a factor driving these population movements. A recent paper, to get academic with you for a second, that, quote, reviewed a growing empirical literature on the effects of personal taxation on the geographic mobility of people and discusses its policy implications, found that, quote, there is growing evidence that taxes can affect the geographic location of people, both within and across countries. This migration channel creates another efficiency cost of taxation that policymakers need to contend with when setting tax policy. So what have we got proposed here in this session? Even with an $18 billion surplus, we have a proposal for a metro area sales tax. Boo, down with that. We have proposals for hikes in fishing licenses and state park permits. Boo! We have a new regressive payroll tax proposed to fund the paid family and medical leave system. This will increase taxes on the lowest earners the most. By the DFL's own designation, this is a regressive tax. And there is even a proposal to add a tax onto the delivery of everything from Amazon packages to pizza. Now that's where you cross a line. This is before we get into any of the proposals for a new top 5th tier of income tax and a new higher rate tax on capital gains. Now this obviously, as the research shows, is all going in the opposite direction to the one we need to be going in if we are going to reverse those population flows to places like Florida. We need to become a state that people want to move to, not a state that people want to get away from, which is what we are right now. We should use this historic opportunity to enact permanent cuts in income tax rates that benefit all Minnesota's hard-pressed taxpayers. To give you a little bit more data before I wrap up, in the last couple of years, Florida has attracted 854,000 new residents from other parts of the United States. That's why we've been hemorrhaging tens of thousands of residents every year. The last 2 years, our net outflow of residents is the highest since at least 1990. Over that period, Florida's GDP has grown by 9.3%, as by 2.8%. Florida's employment has risen by 5.3%, as has fallen by 2.2%. There are 2 Americas. Which one do we want to be part of? Do we want to be part of an America that's growing, that's becoming more prosperous, and that's creating freedom and opportunity? Or do we want to remain part of the America that is shrinking, that is taxing people into oblivion, where economic growth is stagnant and job creation is non-existent, and that people can't wait to get away from. Let's have people moving north up I-35, not south. Thank you very much. That's me done.
All right, thanks a lot, John. Now, before we wrap up, we wanted to play music before the rally started, some kind of inspiring patriotic music. They told us, no, sorry, you can't play music in the rotunda. You might have noticed that when we started cheering right at the beginning of this rally, Bill Walsh was beating on this drum. It made a lot of noise. Well, then we got a message, you can't use a drum. You can't use a drum. And so, I want to raise the roof on this rotunda, and we are going to have to do it with our voices. So everybody, stand up, stand up, stand up for freedom, stand up for freedom, stand up for Minnesota, stand up for freedom, stand up for Minnesota. And let's tell our legislators, stop the madness! 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 All right. We've made ourselves heard today, and believe me, they could hear you all over this building and beyond. And now, let's all go home and make it happen. Thank you all for coming.